Testing audio 1, 2, 3. Testing levels. The levels seem to be good. Hello everyone, Diogo Tadini here. I hope you had a great week so far. Today I want to speak about something that is incredibly important, and I think that will help you with your filmmaking and also with your pocket. Let's do it. So in the beginning of my career, I had a full-time job as well as filmmaking on the weekends. And I was trying to combine both, but obviously it's really hard because you have your 9-to-5 job and then you trying to, over the weekends, film something interesting. You know, you watch all those really cool YouTube videos and you're like, oh my God, I wish I could film that. So I was trying to make that happen. But in the end, I was filming weddings and weddings and weddings. And I still do weddings, but at the time, that was the only thing, or the main thing that I was filming. The main problem for me was I would spend 40 to 45 hours a week working my full-time job. And over the weekend, obviously I was tired, and then I had weddings to film, and it was really hard for me to just go and film something interesting or even come up with something interesting. But that's no one's fault but mine. But the other problem was I was watching other people's videos, and most of the time they would be reviewing new equipment. So I would constantly think that is the way to go. I had to get this new equipment, get this new lens or new slider or something new to make my film happen. But little did I know that that was a lie. I spent thousands and thousands of pounds with that hope, with the idea that in order for me to make a good film, I needed good equipment. But that's not true. I mean, my first film, I'm not entirely sure if I still have it online. If I do, I'll post a link for it down here below. And that film was originally with my 550D with a really old 50mm 1.8, and I'm not saying the Canon one, it was an even cheaper one than that. I had recently bought a slider, so I had some shots with a slider, but the slider was terrible. It was some sort of like Kickstarter type of thing, and it wasn't great. And they had a shoulder mount, but it was actually quite funny because it was pretty much DIY, that shoulder mount. But I managed to use my tripod, a little bit of my slider, and that shoulder mount. But the point here is I couldn't really have done most of it, and I mean most of it, if it wasn't for one thing. I'm gonna give an example. Normally, you think that to make that amazing film, to be looking good and to get those amazing shots, you may need one of these, a slider, maybe one of these, a gimbal, or perhaps one of these, a drone, or even one of these, one of those mini jibs. Yeah, they look cool. Or perhaps crazy expensive lenses. I'm not saying that they don't help you. They definitely help you achieve a better look depending on what your film is about. For instance, it's not viable for me to hire a helicopter to have a shot from above something and then I just go and buy a drone, or I hire someone with a drone. That's fine. It makes sense and that is worth it. Perhaps renting or hiring someone, I understand. I'm not saying that they don't help you. However, I do think that people think too much about the gear and forget about the basics, which is emotions, story, how good your script is, or if you're not writing a script, because I'm not saying that you need a script for everything, even for YouTube, you may write down some notes for your video. This is the most important. Your content is the most important. So in my opinion, one of the most underrated piece of equipment that can be expensive, but you don't need to spend it too much if you have a smaller camera. I'm going to show you now this secret. A tripod. Yeah. The tripod, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated piece of gear that we overlook sometimes. If you're filming some establishing shots, you have a decent tripod. I mean, I'm not saying decent as in £1,000 or dollars or whatever you may think. I'm saying a decent tripod. There are a few out there, and I'm going to show you mine. And I'm going to give you some examples as well, what you can do only with a tripod. So let's say that you get hired for an interview and you need to get some B-roll. Right, you may think, oh, it would be really nice to get that drone shot because the building is amazing. And then you know, if I had a slider, I could come from behind the bush and then show the building and all that kind of stuff. Right, but stop thinking what you could do if you had something, and then start doing something with what you have. As I said, these tools really help you, but in the end of the day, they're only tools. The talent is in you, not in the gear. I mean, you know, again, they're cool, but how much will that increase my rates, for instance? Going back to your job. So you were hired, you need an interview and some establishing shots. You may be able to get an interview with a shoulder mount, for instance, but if you have a tripod, it will be steady, sturdy, and even if you need to add some movements in post, you can do it to kind of pretend that you were handhelding or you had a shoulder mount or something like that. So that is for the interview. For the B-roll shots, well, you have pan, you have tilt, you have even still shots that can help you tell the story, or, you know, at least tell the viewer where that person was, your subject, and you don't need a fancy kit. It's simply a tripod. Again, in order to do something, you will need the minimum. And what is the minimum? Camera, lenses, maybe a couple lenses, maybe a wide angle and a telephoto. You may need a microphone so then you can capture this in audio. Depending on where you are, you will need a monitor, but it's not vital. So camera, lenses, microphone, and a tripod. Tripod is essential. That's the way that you're gonna have really sturdy shots. Let's go back to early 1900s, for instance. If you look at the cinema back then, you had some directors who would try new movements, perhaps handheld or even some sliders, or, you know, punching in that scene to tell a better story. But the majority of the shots were on sticks, simple tripods, and they were really successful. I mean, what's the problem with having a pan or a tilt or even a still shot? I don't see any problems. I mean, those tools can help you out with certain things, but I would suggest you to first develop your story and make sure that you don't break the bank. If you're using your money or your parents' money or whoever's money, just don't use it. Rent instead. I mean, places like the States, UK, Canada, Australia, it's pretty easy to rent. I'm from Brazil. I know that there's some places that you can also rent. It may be more expensive, but still you don't have to spend £10,000 on equipment. Instead, you spend 500 and you have the same amount of equipment for the weekend. So understand your project first and then invest on something. There will be a time in your career that you will need new equipment. That's for sure. I mean, as I said, I have tons of equipment, and that was my mistake. If I could go back to when I first started with my 550D and with that really old 50mm, I would have done things differently. I wouldn't have spent, let's say, 12 grand on equipment and not focus on my stories, because you kind of lose the whole point of filmmaking, if you know what I mean. And that's valid for weddings, for corporate, for documentary, for features, for indie films, anything. If you focus too much on the gear, you miss the point. I mean, people don't care if you used a super expensive slider or you just pan the shot, as long as the story makes sense. So before you invest any money next time, think twice, maybe rent, but value what you have at the moment. So I told you that I was going to show you my tripod. I mean, I have two tripods. I have one Manfrotto, which is carbon fiber, and I use most of the time, especially when I'm traveling, because it's really light, apart from its head, because the head is crazy heavy. But that's a pretty compact system that I have. But whenever I have something more professional that I know that I'm going to be using tilt or pan, I use this one. Don't know if you can see here. Fancier. I actually saw a guy from the UK. I'll see if I have his channel still. I'll link down below. He does really good, especially DIY videos. Really good. And he recommended this big boy here. It's a heavy tripod. I wouldn't say super heavy duty, but it definitely holds my C100, and I'm pretty sure you could also put some other cameras like FS5 and FS7, no problems. It's a fluid head, which is different than my 501 from Manfrotto. They say that it's coming. I just got a delivery from Amazon. So going back to the tripods, as I said, my Manfrotto is good. It's carbon fiber. Is the 0055CX Pro 3. It's quite old already. Its head is quite old as well, but it's been doing the job. I'm not complaining. But if you need something more professional in a way, I would go for something more like this. You also have big brands like Miller or Satchel, if I'm not wrong. They really good tripods, but they're crazy expensive. I mean, you're gonna pay probably over £1,000 for a tripod. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying that take it easy, look after your money first, and then you upgrade when you need it. My Manfrotto with its head, it's probably about £300. Not anymore, but probably I spend around 300 to 350 pounds with the head and the sticks. Whereas this beauty here, you can see there's some, you know, stuff that is clearly like Chinese, you know, the way that it's written and all that. But I paid £150 for the legs and the fluid head. And it came with a bag. So it's amazing how much you can get if you do a proper research. And that will be it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Leave in the comments below what's your favorite piece of gear, and if you agree with the theory that I have that a tripod is one of the most underrated piece of gear that people have out there. Again, I know that people like sliders and gimbals and all that kind of stuff, but I think that a tripod, a good tripod, could get you a long way. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.